Hey, welcome back to the Four Pillars of Healing. I'm Nichola, and I'm excited to be here with you today. Before we begin this episode, I want to offer a gentle care note. This episode touches on themes of childhood trauma, abandonment, grief, and loss. Please take care of your nervous system as you listen, pause, breathe, or come back whenever you need to. This episode, I reflect on how through all of my traumas and all of my experiences, I've landed here. Out of respect for my kids and my family, I won't be sharing detailed fractures of my story here, not because they don't matter, but because the internet isn't where those sacred details belong just now. What I do want to share is the truth beneath them, that even in our deepest ruptures, there's always a pathway home to ourselves. I'm not here to sensationalize pain. I'm here to honor it and to speak of the human experience that so many of us quietly carry. Because when we tell our stories not from the wound itself, but from remembrance, we create a bridge for others to find themselves too. And in that, we remember that we were never really alone. My story began before I ever had words, before I even took my first breath, actually. I was already feeling everything, not through memory, but through a silent transmission of emotion. In my mother's womb, I felt her heartbeat, steady, protective, and a rhythm that carried both courage and grief. Her quiet strength became my first language, and her love my first home. When my biological father left, my mom was 5 months pregnant with me. She already had my brother on her hip, just 15 months old, and somehow she found the strength to start again. She gathered what little she had and rebuilt her life from nothing. She packed up everything she knew and carried us forward with nothing but courage and a quiet determination. Just her, a baby, me growing inside her, and a will made of pure, quiet steel. She packed up her whole world, all of her memories, the heartbreak, the what ifs, and moved from Northern England to South Wales. Closer to the other side of her family, yes, but still completely on her own. And now that I'm a mum myself and going through what I have experienced as a mum, I know what that must have felt like for her. To have your whole world fall apart and still keep showing up every day for the tiny humans who depend on you. That kind of strength, it doesn't get talked about enough. The quiet kind and the kind that just keeps going, even when no one's clapping and no one's helping. That's the kind of strength that stays with you. My brother, he lived that chapter of loss consciously. He saw it, he felt it, he witnessed the absence and absorbs the instability in real time. But for me, it was different. I felt it subconsciously from within, floating in the womb of a woman, doing everything she could to hold herself together while her whole world fell apart. And that's the thing about imprinting. It doesn't always show up in ways that we can see. It lives quietly in the body, in the nervous system, woven into the connective tissue of who we become. We don't just inherit DNA. We inherit the emotional seasons our mothers survived, their resilience and their heartbreak and their hope, all mixed in with all of that, were the quiet imprints left by my father, a man who was a ghost, not a presence in my story. So much of how we show up in the world as adults is shaped by our parents. The way our mothers love us become the way that we learn to love ourselves. And the way our fathers love us shapes how we love others. And our mothers, when we're floating in their wombs, they teach us how to connect to ourselves and how to feel safe in our own being and how to move through the world. And our fathers are the first people to come into our lives and offer us love from the outside. And they show us what giving feels like and how protection and safety and provision are expressed. Our mothers, on the other hand, teach us how to receive and how to nurture and how to soften and to show compassion towards ourselves. But when our father is cold critical, or like mine, absent, it can leave us overgiving in relationships and always trying to earn the love that should have been freely given. And without that strong masculine presence to lean into, we can end up living in a constant state of fight or flight, always needing to be the strong one, even when what we really need is to just be held. And when our mother is stretched thin or heartbroken, we learn to be strong too, and to carry what was never really ours to carry. I inherited my mum's strength, her quiet, unstoppable will to keep going, the grief she never spoke aloud, and the love she held so tightly for her children. There was a fire in her belly that whispered, "Keep going." Over time, that whisper became part of me too. And then there was my dad, and his absence shaped me energetically. Not broken, just marked, like a muscle memory, written into the body before language ever had the chance to even form. I was shaped by a lineage of survival and silent strength, and into a family line of people who keep going, even when life gives them every reason to stop. That was my first initiation into deep feeling, into what it really means to carry stories before you even have words for them, and to be woven from both pain and power, and from fragility and fire all at once. For the longest time, I thought strength meant never falling apart. And it meant keeping it all together and smiling through it and pretending to be fine when really you're just trying to survive. But now I know better. True strength isn't about holding it all in. It's about carrying your pain with grace. It's about letting yourself fall apart and still finding a way to rise again. And my mum, she taught me that, not through her words, but through the way that she lives. She's one of those women who gives more than she's ever received, who pours every last bit of herself into her children and rarely, if ever, pauses for her own needs. She loves fiercely, even when she's running on fumes. And even when her own needs are buried beneath the weight of everything that she carries, I see her now for who she truly is, in her absolute magnificence. A woman who somehow managed the impossible and still, no matter what, loves us with everything she has. That imprint, her perseverance and her fire, and that tenderness that she keeps tucked beneath all the doing, it lives in me. I didn't just inherit her DNA. I inherited her devotion, her fight, her ability to start over when everything fell apart. And that, more than anything, is the foundation of my healing journey. Because every time life has knocked me down, I felt her energy move through me, whispering the same words she's whispered to me before, and probably whispered to herself all those years ago. Keep going, love. You've done hard things before. By the time I was 12, the world had already shown me just how fragile innocence can be. My step-grandfather, someone I trusted, someone everyone trusted, crossed a very, very sacred boundary. And in that instant, my body learned the language of silence. It wasn't just the acts themselves that broke something in me. It was the confusion of it all. Being so young and still a child, and suddenly realizing that the place that should have been my safe space, which was my home, wasn't. It was the betrayal of trust that cut the deepest. My nervous system recognized the danger, but I was a kid, frozen in fear and trapped inside a body that didn't yet know how to fight or run. When the person hurting you is someone who's meant to be safe, as a child, the brain can't make sense of what's happening. It doesn't understand betrayal, so it compartmentalizes survival instead. So I froze, my body shut down to protect me, locking the terror away somewhere deep inside, pushing my core self right to the outer edges of myself, because to be in the center of my body was the most unsafe place to be. That silence was not consent. It was shock. It was my nervous system doing the only thing it could to keep me alive. And the confusion that came after, the silence and the shame and the self-blame, none of those were my choices. They were his choices made for me. And they were symptoms of trauma, the body's way of trying to hold something that was far too big for a 12-year-old to understand. I didn't invite what happened to me. I didn't cause it. I was a child, very innocent, very scared, and completely alone in something that no child should ever have to carry. When the fear finally became louder than the silence, I found the courage to speak. I told a friend at first, a beautiful soul who was one of my neighbors, who didn't let me keep it hidden any longer. Together, we found a way to call for help, and we called Childline in the UK, which is a number for children to seek help. And that moment, it changed everything. It didn't magically make it all better, but it stopped the harm. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't completely alone in my truth anymore. What followed, though, was absolute chaos. There was disbelief from some, heartbreak from others. Our family fractured in ways that would never fully heal. I was accused of lying by people I loved, and others saying that they believed me but still chose to keep him in their lives. But through all of it, my mum believed me. She stood right beside me, fierce and unwavering. And when she realized that we couldn't heal where it happened, she packed us up and she moved us back to where she came from when my father left her. Another act of strength that I'll honor for the rest of my life, because leaving brought me safety. Safety away from him and safety away from those that didn't believe me. It didn't erase the imprint. It was like my body still carried a map of fear. The places inside that clenched, the sounds that made me flinch, the echoes of what it once needed to survive, and the weight of everything I hadn't yet processed. So I did what many trauma survivors do. I folded the truth into silence. I put on the mask of strength, and I just kept moving. Because stillness meant feeling, and feeling meant remembering. And I wasn't ready for any of that yet. Through my teens, I lived from the edges of myself. I was the girl who smiled on cue, who read every room before she spoke, who worked hard enough to make sure that no one ever questioned her. By 17, I was working 3 jobs, doing 75 hours a week. Everybody called it ambitious, but really, it was just my way of not sitting still long enough to hear my own pain. And that's what unspoken trauma does. It teaches you how to survive without ever really feeling safe. It convinces you that being capable means that you're okay. It teaches you how to quietly leave yourself again and again and again until you forget what being whole even feels like. But even then, even in all that quiet disconnection, something in me still remembered. A small flicker of light that refused to go out. A whisper that said, one day you'll come back for her. And that whisper, that tiny steady thread, became the thing that led me home. And as you know from previous episodes, home is back to yourself. And that same thread would eventually lead me to him, to the kind of love that didn't take away, but it restored. And that's where Jonathan enters my story. By the time I was 20, I'd built a life that looked pretty whole on the outside. I was hardworking, I was independent, I was always moving forward. But inside, I was still running from the echoes of my past. And that's when Jonathan arrived. He didn't rush in to fix me or save me. He just saw me, all of me, exactly as I was. He met the girl who'd spent years surviving and quietly offered her a place to finally rest. He was the kind of love that never asked me to shrink. His steadiness was medicine, and a grounding presence that showed my nervous system what safety actually felt like. You know, when you grow up without your father and with abandonment, and when your very first imprint of love is someone walking away, you end up confusing love with effort, and you start believing that you have to earn it to prove you're worth staying for. And my dad's absence had planted that story very deep inside me. But John, he didn't leave, he stayed. And he was steady, consistent, and real. And over time, his presence rewrote something in me. And it taught me that love doesn't have to disappear when things get hard. that real love can hold you steady right through the storm. And with him, I exhaled for the first time in years, and real laughter started to find its way back into my body. Not the polite kind that you just give out of habit, but the deep, belly aching kind that leaves tears running down your face. We built a life that was honest and imperfect, but full of heart. And we raised 3 incredible kids. And we poured our love into our family and our community and created a business that felt like an extension of who we were. Something built on integrity and kindness and genuine care for people and the planet. It wasn't always smooth sailing. We both carried our old stories, sometimes like armor, sometimes like baggage, but we kept choosing each other. We weren't always perfect, but we were always present. And honestly, that mattered more than anything because our love didn't erase each other's shadows. It gave us the courage to turn towards them. He was my mirror, my home, and I was his. And the place where I learned safety and love can actually exist in the same breath. He's one of my greatest teachers, and he showed me what it really was like to be held and to be loved in a way that stays. And for the first time in my life, I started to believe that love could actually stay. We had 23 incredible years together. And then in 2022, everything changed. May the 11th started out as an ordinary day, the kind where you make a cuppa and you chat about nothing and just move through your day the way that you always do. But by the end of that day, it had become the doorway into a world that I'd never imagined that I'd have to walk through. He had a sudden seizure out of nowhere, and that moment led us into a diagnosis that shattered everything we thought we knew. He was diagnosed with glioblastoma, brain cancer. That single moment, it split time and our life in 2, before the seizure and after the seizure. The months that followed felt like I was living inside an ocean. Grief came in waves. It was relentless. It was unpredictable. And some days I could stand, and other days it pulled me completely under. 5 months later, he took his final breath. And in that moment, I felt half of myself go with him. And then in the most surreal, sacred moment, our favorite band, Oasis, started playing through my phone. Live Forever. The song filled the room just before he passed, and at the exact moment he transitioned was the instrumental part of that song. It felt like a parting message from somewhere beyond and a reminder that love doesn't end. It just changes form. That kind of grief doesn't break your heart. It breaks your sense of self. All the roles you've played, the wife, the mother, the hairdresser, they all fall away. And what's left is just you. Raw, wide open, and completely undone. Losing John stripped me back beyond my identity, beyond the woman I thought I was, right down to the edges of my soul. And it brought me face to face with that very first wound, the one that began when my father left. Only this time, I wasn't a child. This time, I could stay present and I could hold the ache, and I was not abandoning myself in it. And that's the thing about grief. In its strange, sacred way, it has this way of circling back and taking you back to the place where your pain first began. Not to punish you, but to give you a chance to meet it differently this time. When I was old enough to consciously realize my father had left, I learned to close my heart. But when John left this world, I learned to keep it open, because keeping my heart open was the only way that I could keep him close. Because that kind of love doesn't die. It just changes form, and it becomes something that you feel rather than see. A breath, a memory, a vibration. It's like the invisible presence that moves through everything. Grief hasn't ended our story. It just began a new one. And it's a story about remembering, about returning to myself and learning to live again, with love still leading the way. And his story, it deserves to be told in its entirety, not just skimmed over as a chapter inside mine, but as a sacred story all of its own. His journey through his illness, with his courage and his humor, And the way he loved, it changed everything about how we see life, how we see death, and what it truly means to live. I'll be dedicating a whole episode to him soon, in a space where his spirit and his laughter and his unshakable heart can be honored in the way that they truly deserve to be. After he passed, I did what I've always done when life falls apart. I went straight into survival mode. For 15 months, every bit of energy I had went to our kids. They just lost their dad. And I couldn't let the world take anything more from them. So I did what I've always done, and I kept moving, and I stayed strong, and I showed up, and I made sure I was the safety net to catch them so they didn't fall into the black hole of grief. And on the outside, it looked like I was coping, but really, my body was just doing what it had been trained to do since before I was even born: fight, flight, and survive. That old wiring, straight back in. Grief didn't just live in my heart, it lived in my chest, in my breath, in my bones. Every part of me felt like I was holding on for dear life. My heart would race out of nowhere. I would get shaky, exhausted. I was so restless. And it's the old imprint that the nervous system never really got to rest. It was still running the show. Then around the 18-month mark, my body started speaking louder, and my heart, the same one that had carried so much love and so much loss and trauma, started whispering for me to slow down. And I was experiencing palpitations and breathlessness. So I went and had some tests, and they found a leaky valve. And I found this deep inner pull that I couldn't ignore anymore, a pull to stop and to really listen. And for the first time in my life, I actually did. I completely stopped. I stopped everything. I got quiet, and in that stillness, something huge shifted. And I started to see how everything, the abandonment, the abuse, the love, the loss, it was all part of the same story. Not a story of punishment, but a story of remembering, of life asking me over and over to come home to myself. All those years of holding it together, of staying strong and pushing through, my body had just been carrying that story, just waiting for the moment it finally felt safe enough to fall apart. And that's the thing about trauma. It doesn't just disappear. It waits, almost like it's sitting quietly in the waiting room of your heart. It waits until there's enough safety and enough love and enough silence for you to open that door and finally let go of what you've been holding on to for so long. And when that moment comes, it doesn't mean you're breaking down. It means you're breaking free. It means your body finally believes that you're safe enough to feel. My heart didn't betray me. It spoke up. It said, okay, we can stop running now. And I listened, and I stopped trying to be busy, and I let myself rest. And in that stillness, I began to see how everything, it's all part of the same sacred curriculum of remembering. The body holds the chapters that we haven't read yet. And when we finally slow down, it hands those chapters back to us very gently, asking us to read them and meet ourselves with compassion this time. Healing doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in tiny, almost invisible moments. And for me, those moments were like breathing without effort, feeling the sun on my face and actually noticing it, crying without apologizing, laughing without feeling guilty. That's such a big one. Those small, ordinary moments, they become the sacred ones. And each one is an act of coming home. And somewhere in between all of that, I realized that life hadn't been punishing me. It had been preparing me. Each loss, each rupture was carving space for more truth, more depth, and more heart. Because I wasn't breaking down, I was breaking open. And when I looked at my children and their strength and their courage and the way that they still let love lead them through grief, I realized healing isn't something that we do alone. We do it together in love, in lineage, in every small choice that we make to stay open when it would be so much easier to close off. When I look back now, I can see that everything, even the pain, was guiding me back to the same truth. I was never broken. I was just remembering who I've always been. My mum's courage still runs through me. And within my own heart, there's this quiet little whisper that keeps moving forward. You are whole. You always were. This podcast is for those walking the same path, for the ones who've lost something sacred and are ready to find themselves again, for the ones holding pain that isn't visible, but quietly lives in the body like a song stuck on repeat, for the ones who feel like they've forgotten something or like a piece of them went missing somewhere along the way and who are finally ready to come home to themselves. We are not just the light that we came from, we're the full expression of that light. We are shaped and textured and deepened by every experience that we've ever lived. Born from pure consciousness, we arrived whole, radiant, and untouched. And yet life, in all of its beauty and its ache, it leaves its marks. And through love and loss, and through joy and heartbreak, and trauma and transformation, these experiences don't dim our light, they give it depth. They carve the shape of who we are now in this moment, not broken, but beautifully complex. Human and divine all at once. I've learned that the lowest points in our life are so often the doorways to our highest selves. Those really fucking hard moments, the ones that gut you, that bring you to your knees, they're also the ones that crack you open to who you really are underneath it all. When we avoid feeling, when we numb or push it all down, we just build another layer between us and our light. But every painful experience, every heartbreak, every loss is actually another invitation to come home, to return to the original you, to the one who was there before the world told you who to be. You can be both you and the scars. That's what makes you who you are today. But so often after trauma or grief or abandonment, we start existing only through our scars and we forget our essence, the soul that was there before the trauma. That was my aha moment in all of this. I realized I needed to feel safe enough to still be that little girl, the little baby floating in my mum's tummy, and also the woman today that's lived through it all. Because all of those versions of me, all of those seasons, every scar, every breakthrough, they make me who I am. And that's okay. That's more than okay. That's what makes us whole. We're not just who we were before the world touched us. We're who we became because it did. And we carry both the original spark that we were born with and all of the sacred stories that have been written along the way. This is growth, and this is the human experience. This is what it really means to remember who you are, and it is most definitely the truest path to healing. Welcome home. If today stirred something in you, please be gentle with yourself. Drink some water, step outside, place a hand on your heart, and remind yourself, I'm here and I'm listening. If you need support, please reach out to a loved one or to a helpline in your country. And if you feel called to share your story or reflections, I'd truly love to hear from you. You are not alone. Thank you for witnessing my story. My hope is that somewhere within it you found a thread of your own and a reminder that even in the unraveling, we're all just finding our way back home. In the next episode, we have our very first guest episode, and I had the absolute honor of sitting down with someone I admire so deeply. She is a real-life magical unicorn, a woman who truly embodies what it means to walk the path of healing with alignment and grace. She's an energy therapist, an intuitive guide, an incredible mother and partner, and I'm lucky enough to call her my friend. I cannot wait to share our conversation with you and introduce you to Kerry Ann Mackenzie. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself. You are whole and you are healing. With love. Thank you.